Hi, good morning. For our session for today, we are going to talk about selecting a research topic. This topic, or selecting a research topic, is one of the most common or major hurdles that we have when we start off with our research journey. Sometimes coming up with the problem is the problem. I think this happens because when we look for research topics, we are looking at all the wrong places. Sometimes we think that, hmm, when we just think enough, think in our seats, brainstorm, we would have a eureka moment and voila, suddenly a topic would come into existence. Or sometimes we just think that when we just search a topic randomly, you would think that you would be able to find the best topic for our research. Indeed, search engines can provide us with research topics. However, sometimes the things that we find in these search engines might not be relevant in our context, might not be interesting for us, or might not be manageable, or even we might not have the available resources to conduct the study that we have found online. While they are able to provide us with sufficient literature, but that's for another discussion, I think selecting a research topic is actually very easy. So for this session, I would like to share with you some of the common tips that I use or that we can follow in order for us to come up with topics that are relevant to us, that can be helpful in our community, and very applicable in our context. So, as we move along, let's first try to take a look at what is a research topic. A research topic is a general idea of interest that you would like to pursue in your research. And where do we get research topics? A research topic can come from, number one, a feeling of discomfort or perceived difficulties. So, as a teacher, for example, I would see that, hmm, why is it that when I teach the statistical part of practical research 2, some students are having some difficulties in finding the right statistical tools. Or I would try to evaluate my lessons. Are my lessons coming across to my students? Are my students able to relate? This topic seems to be quite difficult. Or if you are a student, you would see, hmm, um, many of my classmates don't seem to appreciate history very much, or many of my classmates seem to share a lot of fake news in their social media accounts, and that's quite bothersome, right? So, or I feel like there are some challenges with the new setup, or how do I learn with the new blended learning approach? Or how do I improve my academic performance with the blended learning setup? Or, well, that is more applicable during the modular distance learning. So another source of research problem can be a gap between theory and practice. So we can say that as we learned in our at school, we have learned that throughout history, vaccines have been very effective in eradicating major diseases. However, in the recent COVID-19 pandemic, and it's still happening, it seems that there are still quite a lot of people who do not believe in vaccines. What do people think about vaccines? Is there any gap with what they know, what they think about the vaccines? Why do they have that kind of attitude in terms of vaccines? So that can be a possible research area as well. On the other hand, we can also take a look at the daily experiences that require further inquiry. For example, in our community or in your community, for instance, let's look at disaster risk, right? Why do people keep on uh, doing, or why is it that when there are natural or impending disasters, people do not follow the warnings of the local government? They refuse to relocate. Or are the people prepared enough when it comes to responding to disasters? So that can be part of our daily experiences that may require further inquiry. Another thing is that we can also look at what we see in terms of patterns or trends in our society. So I think one of the most common trends that we can observe right now is the proliferation of fake news. So why is it that even when confronted with facts, some people still believe in fake news? How do people, or what attitudes do people have when they see information in social media? Do they um, take it as it is? Do they verify information? Or what do you think are the factors that affect their behavior in terms of whatever information that they see? So, a pattern or a trend that we see can also be a source of a research problem. And in addition, when we already have some initial ideas and when we read into another excellent source of research topic is through the literature review. Because when you already have an idea about a particular topic of interest, what you can do is to read about what is known about that particular topic. And through literature review, you are able to establish what is known or what is unknown about the topic that you would want to study on. From that, you're able to come up with a gap in knowledge or a gap in methods or a gap in theory and practice or a research gap in general. And from understanding of the research gaps, you would be able to come up with a topic that would fill the gap and come up with a research project that would be very significant since that it is able to address the gap. And now we are able to identify some of the most common sources of research topics. You would want to ask yourself, can I just randomly select any research topic, or do I conduct research just for fun alone or just for compliance alone? Well, there are many reasons to select a research topic that you have identified, but for the purposes of efficiency and contribution of research to society, I would like to share with you some of the reasons or some of the main considerations when conducting a research topic or a research study. One of the most important considerations in selecting a research topic is its relevance or its policy implication. You would want to ask yourself, after conducting this study, how can this study improve the lives of the people, improve practices? Can a new policy be developed um, after conducting this study? So I think it would be very significant. Your study would be very significant if it is able to answer this concern, the relevance or the policy implication. Another thing, another important consideration when selecting a research topic is your interest, because we know that research requires time and a lot of effort. So, will you have enough motivation to conduct this study for its entire duration? That is why your interest about the study that you are conducting is also very important. So, what happens here is that when you just randomly select topics from Google, or when you just copy topics that were, when you use topics that were just handed out to you, those topics might not be interesting. You might not have enough motivation to finish the project until the end of the semester or until the end of the school year. The next consideration when selecting a topic is manageability, and it is related to one of the most important characteristics of a researcher, which is honesty. So, as a researcher, you have to be honest with yourself and assess if you're able to finish your project within the given amount of time. Because, realistically speaking, we are required to submit our research reports within a given time period. Another concern that you also have to address is that when selecting a research topic, do you have enough aptitude, or do you have enough technical capacity to be able to handle the specific variables that you are going to study in your research project? So, when we talk about research projects, they must be smart, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. Available resources would be one of the most important considerations when selecting a research topic. And resources is not only limited to financial resources. For example, literature or references for your research study. The first one is that sometimes when you conduct a study or a topic that is too new, it might be very difficult for you to look for references because very few studies have been conducted about that topic. So as a result, you might have some difficulties in coming up with your framework because very little is known about the topic. Or sometimes when the topic or the available resources are already too old and too obsolete, you're also not able to expand on based on those limited resources alone. Another thing is that we also have to consider the financial considerations in conducting a research study. Do you have enough financial resources to conduct your experiment, considering that you would need to have replicates as well? Or do you have enough technology to be able to develop prototypes for your study? And at the same time, do you have enough time to conduct this kind of study? Because, of course, you would want to develop studies or come up or conduct studies that are some that are very grand, of course. You would want to have that, but sometimes we are constrained with our available or limited resources. So, to be able to come up with a good research study, we need to consider our available resources. Now that we have learned the things to consider about selecting a research topic, we also need to look at some of the characteristics of a good research topic. When creating a research problem, as we go into the specifics, the first consideration is that your research should not be answerable by yes or no, or your research study must not already have an obvious answer. For example, if you would inquire, what is the distance from Antique National School to University of Antique? I think we already have a specific or obvious answer for that. So that kind of topic is no longer researchable. And in this case, we also have to look at topics that would imply relationship of the variables of the study, or it would imply the kinds of variables that would be involved in the study. And in this case, your study or your topic must be presented clearly or not vague. And as we deal with quantitative research, your topic should imply interpretation and analysis of data, meaning to say, you would present variables that are measurable. So when you submit research topics, you would want to ask yourself, how will I measure these variables? In addition, when selecting a research topic, there are also some topics that we need to avoid. And the first one would be controversial topics. These topics are problems rather that would depend highly on the opinion or biases of the researcher. And I think it would be good if you're a beginner in research to avoid these kinds of topics. In addition, it's also not good to come up with topics that are highly technical. For example, talking about depression is a very technical subject because we do not diagnose a person with depression unless we are medical professionals. So I think depression is one of the highly technical subjects um, that only medical professionals should conduct. In addition, do not select topics that are too broad or too narrow because if your topic is too broad, you would need more time to conduct the study. You would examine a lot of variables in your study, and in such a way, you might not be able to finish within the given period of time, or the study becomes too expensive for you as well. If the study is also too narrow, it might not have enough substance for us to come up with a good research report. In addition, it's also not good to select topics that are already too old because maybe there are already so much information about that particular topic. And on the other side of the coin, it's also not good to to research for topics that are too new. As mentioned earlier, l- um, choosing topics that are not, or sorry, that are too new can pose some challenges as well because you might have some limited resources, limited references for you to build on. So selecting topics that are too old or too new might prove more challenging when conducting research, especially if you are new or trying this for the first time. Okay. So this time, let's try to put them all together and let's try to put solidify the concepts and the ideas that we have discussed so far. So when I think of a research project or a research problem or a research topic in a general sense, I would want to ask myself if the topic actually passes the tests or these questions that I will have. So as an example, let us examine this research topic, internet availability at home and students' average sleeping time at night, if this is a good research topic. So before you submit your proposed research topics, you can use these questions as guide. Actually, these questions are just um, integrations, or maybe we can consider this as a summary of what we have discussed in the previous slide. So the first question here is the answer not immediately obvious, or is the answer not limited to yes or no? So we don't really know if there's a relationship between the two variables, right? And I think this topic also contributes to our understanding of the phenomena of the existence of internet and its correlation to the sleeping time, especially of senior high school students. So the next question here is it clear enough for people to understand? I think it's clear enough because the variables are very clear cut. We know the two variables that we are going to study, and although not explicitly stated, we already know the kind of quantitative research design that will be employed in this study. In addition, I also use the following questions to further evaluate if the topics are good or not. So, in relation to manageability, you would want to ask yourself, with this topic, is it possible to answer the questions or finish this within a given period of time? I think yes, because with the proper instrument and with proper sampling techniques, we're able to finish this on time. So currently, we have tools like SPSS or Excel to process the data for this. So this is quantifiable, easily quantifiable. So we can test our assumptions. We can measure the availability of internet. We can measure the sleeping time of the students at night. So we're able to test our assumptions, whether these two variables have correlation or not. So for your submissions, you can use these reference questions to see whether the topic you have submitted is good or not.